Hi, welcome to Smith and Grezzy. This is a bonus podcast because the British Open Championships have announced the test pieces for the Spring Festival. We're going to have a little quick chat about that. Also on the back of this, there's been an announcement of a few rule changes, so we'll discuss that. So, Sandy, I've been having a look on the internet today. It looks like the Spring Festival pieces have been announced, and I personally think they're a great set of pieces. I've played every one of them to a high standard, and I know exactly where the pitfalls are in every one of them. But I'm a little bit dismayed at some of the reaction to these.
It just seems to me a bit of a gut reaction that they're not the current blockbuster type piece, which frankly most people can see through. And yet again, I'll reiterate my thing about I reckon you can only be impressed by some of these modern test pieces if you don't listen to anything else other than modern brass band test pieces. As soon as you start listening to proper music, I just think it falls by the wayside. And we've got to work out what we're trying to test here. And I know there's been comments made about they're not going to be hard enough. Well, but then there's other people coming and countering that already, saying, I think you're wrong. I think they will be hard enough. It depends on a few factors. It depends how good the judges are. It depends. This is the main problem we've got with these whatever you want to call them, the hear 'em, scare 'em test pieces, right? A lot of people and a lot of bands like them because they think it's gonna be enough to separate the bands, right? Yeah. And it's all very one-dimensional. Who can fly about the most convincingly? There's not a mention of making music. No. I spoke to you earlier in the week about things popped up. I can't remember who put this up. One of my mates in Scotland, I think. Mallory Bernstein. Yeah. With the Vienna Phil in 1975, and it's just astonishing. And the music making, and the quality, the brass playing, the writing, the balance, everything about it is stunning. Fantastic. Yeah. And none of it is this flying about crap that we're sort of putting all our eggs in this basket. And I think to be impressed by it or to not be impressed by the test pieces that are being picked, I think is at best naive and at worst ill-informed.
I went and listened to every band play or try to play Sand and Stars at the British Open last year. It was sweltering, and we found that the only way was to just stay still and listen. So we listened to every band, and obviously a few of them bands are now in the Grand Shield because they went down. So someone has gone on and said it should have been Sand and Stars. I just wonder what goes through people's mind.
I'm not surprised. It doesn't bother me in as much as it's totally expected from the sort of people that are mentioning it. But I think they're ill-informed, basically.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of talk going on behind the scenes about this year's British Open piece. And if they had kept the same sort of format where they're handing down the British Open piece to the Grand Shield, it's not viable. It's not.
No.
It remains to be seen, because as we're recording this, the British Open is still a week away, okay? I would suggest that the number of top-notch performances of the Lost Circle will be counted on the fingers of one hand.
Correct.
Or less. And it's about
the same was
to this.
It was the same with Sand and Stars.
Yeah.
I reckon I probably got one hand's fingers plus two. So I were up to 7 that I thought was pretty decent.
Okay.
But the rest of them were really left a lot to be desired, and that was they just couldn't. They didn't have the strength to get through that piece.
I mean, a lot of the issues that are coming out from bands rehearsing this, and I've talked to people that are involved with about 7 or 8 bands that are there, right? They're all struggling with certain things. Stamina being one of them, right?
Yep.
Silly things like the timp part is so complicated in places that if you rehearse a huge chunk of this, or 5 minutes worth, there are so many timp changes, pedal changes, and there's 6 timps, I think. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's right. 6 timps. That when they say, okay, say for instance the letter G, and they're saying, right, we're going to go back, start at letter B, and the timp player's saying, whoa, hang on, you're going to have to give me 3 or 4 minutes to retune all of these timps. Because they've moved, because of the pedaling and the way that the timp part is written, they have to go back and reset everything if they go back and replay the same passage. So conductors are having to play bigger chunks, which isn't really what they want to do. I don't think any of this has really been thought through. And I go back yet again to this idea of who is it for? Who is this for? Who's it impressing? Because it's certainly not impressing. The other thing I've been told, it's certainly not impressing people that we said on the BBC. We talked with Andy Cook and Andy Baker about trying to impress people who organise music festivals and BBC and the proms and everything else. And we have managed, thankfully, to with huge thanks to Gavin Higgins and Ian Porthouse and Tredegar, who did a fantastic job last year getting a foothold in the proms. Yeah. But that was with a piece that is not a test piece, right? That's Gavin just writing music, which is, I think, is where we need to be looking at. Nobody is impressed now by some of these supposed test pieces. They're just vacuous for the main part. Right? Yeah. And a little bit of a banal tune in the middle, maybe, to,
There's immense opportunities in dancers and arias to show some musicality. There's immense opportunities for soloists to show that they can handle that euphonium solo in that. It's not easy.
Right, so here's another thing, right? I heard on the radio, totally by accident, one of those times when you're just in the kitchen, switch the radio on. Mine's always tuned to Radio 3. And it was The Thievish Magpie, Rossini.
Oh, I love it.
Right? Now, this had already started. It was well underway. It was well into the sort of the wind up and it was absolutely electric, right?
Yeah.
To the extent that I sat down properly and listened to it. Right, and at the end they said it was Claudio Abbado conducting the Chamber Orchestra of Europe. Right,
yeah,
it's absolutely electric. Right, and he took that old warhorse of an overture and breathed new life into it. Yeah, and played it with panache and style and vigor and oomph and everything about it. And suaveness, whatever you want to call it. The playing was fantastic, the interpretation, everything about it. Yeah, that's the sort of piece that we would get out and think, oh, goodness, what's this old yellow music, doing stuff. And we're so narrow-minded in what constitutes good. And there's a fear. I think there's a fear involved in this as well. That we don't want pieces that they think is going to level the playing field a bit. I think all 3 of those pieces are great pieces. Yeah. Martin's written some tremendous stuff.
Oh, yes.
Malcolm Arnold, it's Malcolm Arnold, I
played Terra Australis. It was written for YBS when I was there, and we took it to Australia, obviously. It was written for that tour. Now, it is difficult, but it's not as difficult as dancers and arias, in my honest opinion. So they've got it right. They've got it bang on.
I just think that let's see how it goes. I must admit, I was slightly shocked but pleasantly surprised when I saw the announcement.
Yeah.
or heard about it a couple of days ago. And I thought, oh, okay, maybe they're learning a lesson here. That handing down these test pieces is just not viable. You know, I thought Andy Baker made a huge point when we did the podcast about the number of percussion. You know, so if you look at this lost circle, 6 percussionists, so however many bands, you know, 18 bands times 6, 20 bands times 6, whatever that is with percussionists. You hand that down to the Grand Shield, and you're then looking for, and just I would just like to say, I think those the moves as far as registration are concerned, I don't think I think anybody complaining against them has vested interest in having foreign players in, or stealing players from the British Open, and it needs to happen. It's got to happen. Everything about, you know, we kept going on in this last one about Emperor's New Clothes with test pieces and stuff, and it's Emperor's New Clothes with band membership. Yeah. Saying that, you know, people, we have to borrow people. The only way we can survive, we have to borrow people. Well, I'm rapidly getting to the sort of conclusion that maybe we don't. Maybe we just have to. Maybe, you know, people are saying, oh, these are going to set banding back, these rules, and registration should be scrapped and all this.
What a load of rubbish.
I think that's nonsense. There is a sport element in this. We need to find out who has the best band. Not who has the best band with 4 depths from a top band and a couple of foreigners playing end cheers. And we've said this before, inevitably, it's never the second horn, it's always the solo horn that's mysteriously missing.
Oh, the principal cornet,
Yeah. We've got to fess up to this and say, what's the standard, what's the state of play? Maybe that was something that was taken into account when they were picking these pieces, to give the bands more encouragement. Maybe the feedback from last year was that these pieces are just becoming not enjoyable.
So, you know, these test pieces, I mean, going back to them, Fantasy for Band, the Malcolm Arnold, I've done that as well. I've played it and conducted it. Now, at first section level we did it. It's one heck of a difficult piece to rehearse for the front row because it's tiring.
Yeah.
It's mostly based around the front row.
I know.
High up. And, you know, it will test them because my lot fell down with it, you know, when I had them. You know, the last week in, I were having to back off so I can manage the performance better on stage. But they were tired, really tired. So I think that's a great choice. I think it's going to stretch them. And again, in that middle section of that piece, it gives them a chance to make a bit of quality music. He writes lovely tunes.
You've got to think about the bigger picture with this as well. And as much as the Grand Shield is still trying to make money. Yeah. Okay. You speak to people who are involved in it, and they're saying things are going to have to change. That's losing money, right? So they're trying to pick test pieces that will get bums on seats somehow.
Quite correct.
Now, I think these 3 pieces have the distinct opportunity to do that.
Yeah.
Okay. You need proper judges. Because it's obvious from the way that some people have reacted to these pieces, saying they're not hard enough. I mean, it's almost a tacit admission that they're not capable of differentiating a band that plays dances and arias really well and a band that plays dances and arias and sort of, you know, rattles their way through it a bit approximate. You know, are they actually admitting that?
There's comments on there. There's comments on there that it's a first section piece. Well, in a podcast a couple of weeks ago, I'm sure I mentioned about taking a first section band on that very piece. And it's not a first section piece. Never will be.
It's not. I mean,
because it's too difficult.
These things, we've talked about it forever. Just because a piece is 30, 40 years old, 50 years old, you know, it just automatically gets bumped down the section. The standards aren't going up.
No, they're going down.
You know.
I think it was 1984 when that was written.
Yeah. But if you're talking about making a really good musical job of this piece, and I hate this technical and musical, I hate these terms because there's far more crossover than people imagine. They think technical means fast notes, black notes. They think musical means the cornet solo in the middle movement or whatever.
Yeah, well, technical to me is the quiet playing and the expressive playing.
We said all this, and we'll becoming boring because we're rattling on about it all the time. But we have to get this bigger picture of what music's about, because people are laughing at us, right? I was told that one band who has a good associate, and it's a top band, who has a really good association with a conductor who is at the top of their game and working at the proms and various other things. Big name conductor was looking at these pieces, one or two of these sort of pieces, when they visited the band room to do a project stuff of quality music, and they were openly laughing at these pieces and saying, "Why are you playing this rubbish?"
Yeah.
Right now, we have to sit up and take notice of these people, right? But again, these are people from outside seeing the bigger picture, right? They're performing this music that is, yes, they'll perform new stuff, and there's some really good new stuff, right? In the orchestral world and the proms and everything else, right? You hear it all the time. I even made a note this morning of a couple of pieces I heard on Radio 3 this morning and what I want to explore a bit more. But their standard repertoire is, a lot of it is there all the time. It's what do you do with it then? What do you do with that to make that, it's not dead. You can't say Mahler's dead, Shostakovich is dead, Stravinsky's dead, whatever else. Wagner, Brahms, whatever else you want to talk about. That's before you get into 20th century stuff properly. And you suddenly hear things like Rossini's Thievish Magpie. It sounds like a new piece because these people have the capability and the insight and the musical nous to bring these pieces alive. Yeah. And that's what we don't have. We're just hacking through sort of, the metronome jockeys, just banging through, just sort of,
trying to copy old recordings.
Yeah, but, and all this, it's in 3, 5, 16, 7, 8, 3, 4, 2. We'll stick it all in 4, 4 and we'll tidy it up at the end. We'll just keep it nice and, we'll bang, bang, bang. That's nonsense, and then you've got really good people looking at this and openly laughing at us. Yeah. Right? So who is it kidding? Who are we kidding? Who's it for?
Ourselves, obviously.
And I think some of the reaction to these pieces, which I think are quite clever selections. I think the reaction to them, it shows you where some people's heads are. Yeah. And they're obviously they obviously don't like the fact that they would have to maybe separate bands using these pieces. Then maybe it's a tacit admission that they're not up to the task of doing that. I don't know.
You alluded to it earlier, Sandy, about the changing in registration as well. I applaud that. I know we had a right rant about it. I happen to think rightly so. And I'm not saying that they've been listening to us, but the argument got out there, and I applaud them for making that decision. I do wish it was for all contests. The moving around bands, but we've got real progress there.
It's a start.
And it's the British Open that's at the forefront of that, and I do applaud it.
I think we have to do whatever we have within our means, our power, collectively in Britain, to make British bands better. I've said this right from when we started these podcasts. I don't give a monkeys who wins these contests. I just want them to be worth listening to. I want these bands, I want these performances to be revered, like they have some performances have been in the past about how good they were. And I think we do that by getting back to the music and getting away from this. You talk to players and they're not I'm talking about young players as well, right? Players in the 20s and early 30s, saying that this stuff is just a joke.
Yeah.
That it's, it's not representative of playing their instrument. And they don't like it. You also have, and I've heard this as well, very experienced, very good players in all parts of the band, soloists and, what you might term, I don't mean this in any sort of derogatory way, secondary parts, right? Which we all know that without the secondary parts being played really well, you don't have a band.
No.
Saying that I've just about had enough of this. If it's going to be more of this, I'm jacking it.
Yeah.
So we cannot afford to lose good players by carrying on this route. So as far as the Grand Shield weekend pieces being picked, yeah, if you think it's too easy, go and show us how easy it is.
Yeah.
But I think we have to get back to this idea that there's more to it than just flying about, and there's making music.
Yeah.
And again, I'll reiterate it. I never listen to any other music and think the way I do when I'm supposed to react to brass band test pieces. It is like, and you used to get circuses on the telly, and you used to get a sea lion playing, I don't know, Bluebells of Scotland on car horns or something, or the national anthem on car horns.
Yeah.
For about 10 seconds, you think, "What the hell? That's clever, isn't it?" And then you think, "Yeah, it's still a sea lion playing car horns." And some of this stuff that's been peddled as being impressive.
Yeah.
Is impressive in that way. It's like the dog on Britain's Got Talent. I hate that bloody programme, but it's like the dog jumping through hoops and dancing and all that crap, right? You think, God, yeah, it's sort of clever in a bit of a sort of
funny
slightly
way.
Empty way.
Yeah.
But that's the end of it, and this is, and then you've got, real musicians from the real musical world, looking at our test pieces and openly laughing. Why are you playing this rubbish? Why are you playing this, right? So I think maybe the next move we need to do is, and we've talked about, Andy Baker talked about this, these brass band career conductors who we used to have. We used to have the Jeffrey Brands, Peter Parks, Howard Snell, Gary Howarth, all these people, Iford James, blah, blah, blah. There's more of them than that. Coming in from outside, bringing ideas, bringing connections, and widening the scope of things. All right? So maybe we need to be looking at these people who I know have dipped their toe in on various projects. Two that spring to mind straight away are Martin Brabbins and John Wilson, right?
Yeah.
That we ask them for advice. We ask them for advice on things like repertoire, and they need to tell us candidly their opinion on our repertoire choices and what we should be looking for, both in compositions and in performances, because what they're looking for when they do their performances is a totally different thing than what we're looking for.
It is. I'd love to have Ian Bousfield there, because one thing about Ian, he's very forthright. He won't hold back.
He'll call a spade a spade.
He will.
Yeah, and there are various other people like that as well that we could name. I just think we need to be taken. It's whether banders really want this, because some of the solutions and comments would be quite damning. But are they prepared to put up with this? But these are coming from people who are, at the top of their game, right?
Very top,
and if they're showing an interest in bands and getting involved, then we need to piggyback on that and ask their opinions on all of this stuff. To play them play them some of this new stuff and say, is this any good? Are we getting the wrong end of the stick here? Are we just intransigent, or are we just, and see what they say. And I'd quite happily, if Martin Brabbins came back and said, actually, this isn't a bad piece, then I'd think, okay, that's a reassessment then. But
You've
at the
got to
moment,
listen to people like that.
I suspect you're not going to get that.
No.
So I think also we need to get those type of people in the box more often to give a wider perspective on what we're doing. But again, I think that comes with a lot of problems, not least of which would be getting some of the brass band career conductors to accept that these type of people know what they're doing. Because that's something I get told from well-respected people all the time, that what they get thrown at them is, he's all right, he's all right doing the proms and all this sort of thing. And what does he know about brass bands? I mean, it's just laughable. So I think we need to get over this. We used to do it all the time.
Yeah,
we used to have
did.
people like David Wilcox and all this sort of stuff.
John Price Jones. I remember John Price Jones coming in.
Yeah.
Wonderful conductor.
Yeah. And
Howard Williams.
People who are doing the real thing, not piddling about with Sibelius in their back bedroom.
Yeah.
And we get an honest opinion on the sort of music we're playing. And we need to go, if they have contacts within the musical establishment, to get back in to say, right, what do we need to be playing for you to give us a shot at getting to these big festivals? And nothing.
I've got a sneaky feeling that they'll have a right old chuckle about some of the concerts.
Yeah,
because I get dismayed with what I hear sometimes.
Yeah,
it's just chitter chatter nonsense, and then you might get 80 bars, and this is coming out in some test pieces. You might get 80 bars chitter chattering away, and then all of a sudden it slows down immediately, changes tempo. There's no progression in these pieces. It's just sudden tempo change, and it's just nonsense. It doesn't say anything to me.
I think the registration rules are a start, and I think we should be pushing now for more involvement from these orchestral guys.
Yeah.
And picking their brains, taking advice. And we shouldn't get to the stage where these people are being hoarded by individual bands. We need to do it as a movement. But the bottom line, going right back to the nitty-gritty, is that both of these contests are owned by private individuals.
Yeah.
And they will choose, to some extent, one more than the other, pieces that they like.
Yeah.
Pieces that they think they're going to make a profit on. They'll get people on, bums on seats, blah, blah, blah. And that's it,
Absolutely.
I think that's the next move. We need to do it, but it's a start.
So, Sandy, thanks for that. I just thought we'd have a little short podcast, just to say that we've seen what's going on, and it's like a bit of a bonus podcast, really. So, thanks for your thoughts on it. I've got my thoughts on it, and well done, the British Open. I really do applaud what you've done. So congratulations. So that's the end of this short one from Smith and Grezzy, and we'll see you again soon.